This was the moment football fans in Curaçao found out they were heading to their first World Cup, securing a spot with a goalless draw over Jamaica on the final day of CONCACAF qualifying.
Imagine a country smaller than many cities, with fewer people than 2 Wembley stadiums. Now imagine that country walking onto the World Cup stage against Germany. Curaçao was never supposed to get this far. But behind this miracle is a story of slavery, migration, identity, and one night in Jamaica. Curaçao is a small island in the southern Caribbean, about 65 kilometers north of Venezuela. It covers only 444 square kilometers and has around 158,000 people. Its capital, Willemstad, is famous for its bright buildings. Pink, yellow, blue, and green houses line the harbor. It looks like a Dutch city dropped into the Caribbean sun. But Curaçao is not a normal country. It is not fully independent. It is an autonomous country inside the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Since 2010, Curaçao has had its own parliament, prime minister, and local government. Its people carry Dutch passports, but the island controls most of its own affairs. In football, Curaçao plays under its own name and flag. That link with the Netherlands would later help create the best team in the island's history. But first, we need to understand the people behind the badge. Curaçao has always been a meeting place. Its first people came from South America. Spanish explorers arrived near the end of the 15th century. The Dutch took control in 1634 and turned the island into an important trading base. Part of that trade was slavery. Thousands of enslaved Africans were taken through Curaçao or forced to work there. Slavery did not end on the island until 1863. Over time, people from Africa, Europe, South America, the Caribbean, and the Middle East all shaped Curaçao. Their cultures mixed and created something new. You can hear that story in Papiamentu, the main language spoken on the island. Papiamentu includes words and sounds from Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, and African languages. It is almost like several languages joined one team and decided to stay together. But Papiamentu is more than a fun mix of words. It grew among people who lived under colonial rule. For years it was seen as the language of ordinary islanders. Today it is an official language and a strong part of Curaçao's identity. That same spirit can be seen in the story of Tula. On August 17, 1795, Tula, an enslaved man, refused to keep working on a plantation. He was not alone. Inspired by freedom movements in other parts of the world, Tula and other enslaved people demanded their freedom. The revolt grew fast. Hundreds joined. They moved across the island, freed other enslaved people, and fought the colonial government for more than a month. Tula tried to explain his cause. If Europeans believed in freedom, why should Africans in Curaçao not have the same right? The rulers answered with force. The revolt was crushed. Tula was captured, tortured, and killed. For many years, colonial leaders called him a criminal. The people of Curaçao saw him as a hero. Today, Tula is remembered as a national symbol of courage and freedom. A football match is not the same as a fight against slavery, but national teams carry history. They carry family stories, pain, pride, and memory. When Curaçao's players wear the shirt, they represent more than a small island. They represent a people who have fought to keep their identity alive. And this is where the football story gets interesting. Most of Curaçao's best players were born in the Netherlands. Their parents or grandparents came from Curaçao. But many of the players grew up in Dutch cities and learned football in Dutch academies. Some trained at clubs such as Ajax, PSV, or Feyenoord. Others played in the Dutch League, England, and other parts of Europe. So Curaçao is a Caribbean team built with Dutch football training. Captain Leandro Bacuna was born in Groningen. His brother Juninho was also born in the Netherlands. Goalkeeper Eloy Room once played for Dutch youth teams before choosing Curaçao. Many others followed the same path. Some were good enough to play in Europe, but not likely to become regular stars for the Netherlands. Curaçao gave them another choice. They could play for the island of their parents and grandparents. That does not make them less Curaçaoan. A player can be born in Rotterdam and still grow up with Curaçaoan food, music, language, and family traditions. The island understood that its football family was much bigger than the people living there. Then Curaçao hired a coach who knew how to use that talent. Dick Advocaat had coached for decades. He had managed the Netherlands, South Korea, Russia, Belgium, Serbia, Iraq, and many clubs. Curaçao hired him in 2024. He brought order, experience, and belief. The team already had skill, but World Cup qualifying in CONCACAF can be rough. The travel is hard. The games are physical. One bad result can ruin everything. Advocaat made Curaçao tougher and better organized. Then came the final match. On November 18, 2025, Curaçao faced Jamaica in Kingston. Curaçao needed a draw to reach the World Cup. Jamaica needed to win. Advocaat was not on the bench because of a family emergency, but he stayed in contact with his staff. For 90 minutes, Curaçao defended. Jamaica pushed forward. The crowd roared. Curaçao blocked shots, cleared crosses, and held on. Then, deep into added time, the referee gave Jamaica a penalty. It looked like Curaçao's dream was over. One goal would send Jamaica to the World Cup and leave Curaçao behind. But VAR stepped in. The referee checked the screen and canceled the penalty. A few moments later, the game ended 0-0. Usually, a scoreless draw feels dull. This one changed history. Curaçao reached the World Cup for the first time. It became the smallest country by population ever to qualify for the men's tournament. Back home, people filled the streets of Willemstad. Cars honked. Flags hung from windows. Fans danced and shouted. They were celebrating a game with no goals. That is football. Sometimes 0-0 is the most beautiful score in the world. At the World Cup, Curaçao entered a very hard group with Germany, Ecuador, and Côte d'Ivoire. Germany had won the tournament 4 times. Ecuador had become one of South America's strongest teams. Côte d'Ivoire had top players from major European clubs. Curaçao had 158,000 people and a squad built from families living far beyond the island. The gap looked huge. In its first match, Germany scored after only 6 minutes. It seemed like a long night was coming. Then Livano Comenencia scored for Curaçao. In the 21st minute, Germany won, Curaçao won. For a few amazing minutes, the smallest country ever to qualify was level with a 4-time world champion. It was Curaçao's first World Cup goal. The fans celebrated like they had won the cup. Germany later took control and won 7-1. The score hurt. At the World Cup, every mistake can become a goal. But the defeat did not erase the bigger story. Curaçao had reached the tournament. It had sung its anthem. It had scored against Germany. Millions of people were now learning about an island they may have only known as a holiday place. And even after that heavy loss, Curaçao still had more matches to play. The road was hard, but this team had already beaten the odds once. A country this small was not supposed to qualify. A team made mostly from players born far from the island was not supposed to finish above Jamaica. A coach close to 80 was not supposed to begin another great World Cup story. Yet all of it happened. Curaçao may not have the money, stadiums, or number of players that the biggest countries have. But football is not only about size. It is about belief, planning, identity, and taking your chance when it comes. Curaçao's first World Cup may end quickly, but the island has already won something bigger. The world now knows its name. If Curaçao's story surprised you, like this video and subscribe for more football stories from around the world. Tell us how far this tiny nation can go. Then watch our next video about Congo's return to the World Cup after 52 years away. You will not want to miss it.